Hi, so this is Durant, and we are making this video about using SSH keys with GitHub because we are making videos about Emacs. Overall, there are two things you need to do to get GitHub to recognize your SSH keys so you don't have to type your password every time you push to your repository. The first thing is you need to give github.com your public key, and the second thing is you need to authenticate your private key on your computer using SSH agent, and I'll be showing you how to do both those things. What happens when you're in a directory with some code that you've made and you want to push to a new repository that you've made, say, on github.com? If I were to type git push here, you'll see this error, permission denied, public key, and it could not read from the repository. Please make sure you have the correct rights and that the repository exists. The first thing we need to do is we need to make some SSH keys. What are SSH keys and what is SSH? SSH is short for a secure shell, and you can just go to the Wikipedia page and look for SSH. And basically, it's a protocol that allows you to operate securely over an unsecure network. It uses something called public key cryptography. So if you look that up on Wikipedia, you'll find this page. Basically, you have two keys. One is public, which everyone sees, and one is private, which you should never share. So the public one might allow you to create multiple repositories, all with the same public key, so they all link back to you, the same person, and you could even be anonymous. The private key is what you use to prove that you were the person that made all those changes to those repositories, or that you did something else with that public key. So you should never, never, never share your private key, but you can use it to authenticate with SSH agent, as we'll show you today. So how do you make these keys? So let's go to a terminal, and let's I'm actually in the SSH directory, the .ssh directory. So because it begins with dot, it's a hidden file. So if you were to list it from your home directory, you wouldn't see it unless in Unix you listed it with -a, ls-a. So let's just try running SSH keygen to make some keys. So I'll say SSH -keygen, and the type of encryption to use will be RSA, and how many bits will I use? Let's make it 4096, strong enough for today, and let's give it a comment. In the comment, I'll use an email address. I'll just make up an email address. I'll say durant@example.com. You should or could use your own email address there, and I'll show you where the comment appears after you make the keys. So let's type return for SSH keygen. It's offering you to put it, here's my home directory, users durant.ssh, and ID _RSA, that's fine, I'll just hit return. It wants a passphrase, so I'll make one up. You need to remember this, so be sure to remember it. You'll need it to authenticate with your private key. So asks you once, I'll do it again. And here it shows you this SHA-256 version, and it also shows you the comment that you typed in above. So let's see what it actually made. In your SSH directory, you should have .ssh, you should have the ID RSA file, and you should also have the .rsa pub file. So the first one is your private key, that's the one you never share, and the second one is your public key, which is the one you should be happy to share. So let's actually use these. What does it actually look like? Let's look at this public key file, and this is really all it is. It says SSH-RSA, has some big string, and that comment that you added at the end. I went to settings once I was logged into GitHub, and then I chose SSH keys. And here you can see I have a couple keys already. I'm just going to add a new SSH key. I'm going to call this one test. I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to say add key. Okay, so here's my test key that I added, and you'll notice this format here. This is actually a fingerprint of your key, and it's the MD5 fingerprint. I'll show you how you can look at that. So now that you've added that SSH key to GitHub, so that GitHub sees your public key and knows how to match it when it's requested with your private key. Let's see how to tell your computer to use the private key. So here, back in the terminal, we'll just call SSH add. So we're going to add this private key. So we'll say .sh and RSA, and here there's no .pub at the end. So when we add this, it will ask for your password that you typed in before, and you'll always have to remember this. And there it goes, identity added, success. So now, when we go back to the directory where you want to push, we can try pushing again. Now, actually, before I push, I'll just point out one thing that's important. In your .git config file, we added this line here, which is for remote origin. We want to say the URL is in this format, and I'll show you where this format comes from. When you created the directory, that repository rather, you had a choice of HTTPS or SSH when you were on the GitHub website. And if you'll notice here, you could just run this command, git remote add origin, and you're going to give it this format. So basically, like, here's a user git at github.com, and like this kind of directory, which is basically the same as the directory up here for the repository. Then it'll tell you that you should push using this command. So let's copy that. And so you'll see when I ran this command, git remote add, it basically added this line in the .git config file of the repository we want to push. So let's get that command to push this repo. It was back here. Let's copy that, paste it, and let's run it. And look, lo and behold, we were able to push. So there were 6 things that I wanted to push here. And this is actually the first time. This repository was empty before. This is the page you get when you're first setting it up. And now if I look, these are all the files that I added. Let's double check, actually. One more thing I said I would show you is the fingerprint. As you'll notice back here on the SSH keys page, this is in a certain format. It doesn't look anything like your public key. But if you want to, you can view your public key in that MD5 style. So you just do SSH keygen again, and you have to remind it that the encryption is going to be MD5, or that's the format that you want to print it in. L is basically for listing the MD5 with the file, and you basically give it your .ssh public key, so that's .ssh, ERSA, and pub is what we need, and it should look like this. So it should sort of begin 4B:A2 something and end in 96, and here it is, 4B:A2 ending in 96. So that's with the same public key that you used to add to GitHub. Once again, remember that you used the private key when you used SSH add to add the identity, and you also had to type in your password. So you gave it your public key, and you type in your password. And those are the only 2 things you need to push to GitHub, and the next time you push, you will not have to type in your password.